Hurts has got it, wants to throw. Hurts setting up the screen. It is complete and blown up. Miles Sanders caught it. Malcolm Rodriguez was there waiting for him. That's a big play by Rodrigo.
Welcome to a remote edition of the Twentyman in the Huddle podcast. And as you can see, I am joined by the Hall of Famer, Mike O'Hara. And it was trade deadline day today in the NFL. And the Lions made a pretty significant move. Traded TJ Hockenson inside the division to the Minnesota Vikings. Also a 2023 fourth round pick and a 2024 fourth round pick. And in return, the Lions get a second round pick this year and a 2024 third round pick. I guess, what was your first reaction when you heard the news?
Well, we heard, sort of conversation about it and just talk, really was. Nobody had anything firm. Nobody mentioned the Vikings. I'm talking about, yesterday, today being Tuesday, Monday, and so on. And even before that, Tim, I think there were sort of these long-range forecasts that TJ would not be a member of the Detroit Lions, maybe 2023 or whatever. But still, to me, it surprised me. It really did. I didn't think they'd do it. He was one of their really true playmakers. You saw that game last week, with 58-yard run with the ball and all that, catch and run. And I thought he had values. And I wouldn't call him a wide receiver, but I would call him a pass catcher. So I was surprised. And really, frankly, I'd rather see the player than the draft picks. But I get it. I understand it all. But I always like the player. I really do.
Yeah, well, I think we're in lockstep on this one, Mike. And obviously it was a little bit telling to me when the team and TJ's representatives didn't get a long-term deal, weren't really talking about a long-term deal leading into this season, because typically teams don't want to go to that fifth-year option if you don't have to, especially with a top 10 pick and the compensation that's involved. It's a little bit different with a top 10 pick on a fifth-year option. And so I thought that was a little bit telling that he maybe wasn't really in the long-term plans, but I'm with you. I mean, there's no guarantee that the player that you pick in the second round, the player you pick in the third round is going to be as good as a 25-year-old Pro Bowl player who, like you mentioned, has shown that he can make plays in this league. I agree with you. I get it though. Sheila Hamp came out the other day. She talked to us and she said, look, this was a teardown and a rebuild. And I think they're going in for the long haul on this thing. And I think that's kind of what this move tells me as well. But I think the disappointing part, and I can see it from fans, if I look at my Twitter, I don't know if fans agreed with the move so much based on my Twitter feeds, but the frustration is you spend a number 8 overall pick on TJ Hockenson, expecting him to be one of those foundational pieces, right? One of those pieces that you can build on, one of those 3 guys on this offense that you can kind of build around and be playmakers. And now that's not the case. So you're kind of rebuilding again from that standpoint, trying to bring in now another playmaker. And so a little bit surprising, but I agree with you. I wasn't shocked by it because we had heard his name. We had heard DeAndre Swift's name. Those are kind of 2 of the popular ones. So I didn't think it would happen, but obviously it did.
Also, a thing that kind of struck me too is that within the NFC North, the Vikings are building to win the division, which I think they will, and beyond. Get to the conference championship, get to the Super Bowl. They've been to 4 Super Bowls in their life in the life of the franchise, but nothing in the last 40 or 45 years or something like that. So, they're one of the franchises that's really all in this year to try like Miami and a couple of others have really made dramatic moves, I should say, to strengthen their roster for right now. And one of the things that went through my mind, I was riding in the car doing something, I pull over to take care of some business. And one of the first things I thought to myself was, tear down continues.
Right.
When does it stop? When is the absolute building? But, this is really, I think, sort of sent out for the supplies to do the rebuilding now. And like all things, it better work.
It better work. And look, now you've got 2 first-round picks next year, the one from the Rams, obviously. You've got 2 second-round picks, yours and the one from the Vikings. And then whatever that third-round pick, the way it's going right now, is going to be very high too. So, I mean, as it stands right now, you've got 5 picks in the top 65. But it's rare, Mike, and you've been covering, this team.
Let's not bring up my age.
For a long time. You don't often see teams come in and first round picks make that immediate impact that you all of a sudden flip this around and you're a winning team, maybe in the second year of that. So do you worry that this kind of move signals, look, this is maybe something we're eyeing for 2024 and not 2023? Is there that worry there at all?
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's if you're a fan and a season ticket buyer or just a guy who buys, maybe 3-4 games a year, you want to see results. You want to see the show. And I will say this: at Ford Field, the Lions have put on a pretty good show. They haven't won one game, they have 3 losses, but they've moved the ball, they've scored points, they've been in it really to the last possession, but they haven't won, and that's obviously the next and most important step is to start, putting on a great show, but winning games, and that's the best show of all.
I want to go back to the part you mentioned about the Vikings too. And now you look at them, you've got Kirk Cousins, right? Who I think is an undervalued quarterback in this league, at least statistically. You've got Dalvin Cook, you've got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and now TJ Hockenson. I mean, that's a pretty good trio of weapons that you've got there. And when you're talking about Cook and Jefferson and Hockenson, I mean, those guys have a number of years left ahead of them too.
Yeah, these are young. These are guys really, they're really not in their athletic prime yet, really, when you think about it. Thielen, older guy, but just one other thing too, Tim, with the Vikings. Irv Smith had a badly sprained ankle, is going to be out 10, 12 games, 10, 12 weeks, whatever it is, went on injured reserve today. Bingo. They went out and got the best tight end they could get. And that shows you exactly what they think, what they think about their team. And look what the changes they've made since last year. New GM, new head coach, and now the massage in the offense to be even better than it was before.
Well, when you get off to a 6-1 start, you're afforded the opportunity to do things.
Absolutely.
Like that. And when you're 1-6, this is the reality of starting out 1-6. I mean, it's just your windows are so short in the NFL, and we see it year after year. Teams go from first to worst and worst to first, and vice versa. It's just you got to take advantage of that window when you see an opportunity. With Green Bay struggling, Chicago obviously rebuilding, Detroit at 1-6. I think Minnesota sees themselves as, hey, we're 6-1. We're clear a few games of everyone else in the division. We can host a playoff game. Hey, let's go all in. Our window is now. It's this year. This is our opportunity. So let's go do it. We'll give up a little bit of the future to do it now because windows are so tight. And, another thing I saw, ESPN Stats and Information said this was the first time the Lions traded a player within the division since 1998, I think was the statistic. And I think, Mike, do you think the extra playoff spot in NFC and AFC now maybe makes it where back in the day, you never traded a guy to a division opponent, but because of that extra playoff spot, is it now maybe a little bit different that you see there's other avenues than winning your division to now get into the postseason and play beyond?
No, absolutely. I don't want to go too far back on this, but you go back into the pre-Super Bowl days where they're just the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, one each, played for the National Football League championship. And so, the more you add to the mix, first when they had 3 divisions and 1 wild card, 4 teams making the playoffs, and it's steadily grown to 5, 6, and 7. Will it stop? I don't know. It seems to be working pretty well. The National Football League is a master at maximizing opportunities to get its product out there and add revenue. I wouldn't be surprised if someday it's 8 teams, but you're absolutely right. You want a piece of that pie because you get in there, you can move up real quick.
Well, let's stay within the division a little bit. We mentioned the Bears a little bit. They made a move today too that I think was a big one for their young quarterback, Justin Fields. They went and spent a 2nd-round pick to get Chase Claypool. Now that comes following, a couple trades that they made, trade away some defensive players. Roquan Smith, the latest one where they gave up, where they got a 2nd and 5th, and then they go around and turn that 2nd-round pick into Chase Claypool, who I think is a guy that can help Justin Fields. You agree?
Absolutely. They traded one of their top pass rushers too. So, I think that what they're saying is our quarterback is our most important player. We're going to do what we can to support him. And I don't think the previous regime may have thought that, but they didn't act that way. They didn't give you that feel that your quarterback, your young quarterback in particular, is the most important person in your franchise, because he is. He really is.
How important are these next 10 games for Jared Goff and for, where this team goes? You've now got 2 first-round picks, Mike. You've got 2 second-round picks. You've got what looks to be a top pick in the 3rd round. You now have capital, and you can either select some players, or let's say you win some games, you can now package some picks. The Detroit Lions have not taken a quarterback high in the draft since Matthew Stafford, really 2009. And so, how important is this next 10 games in deciding Jared Goff, who's still, I think, 27, 28 years old, is he our future, or now we have the capital to, rebuild this thing, get ourselves a young quarterback in and see if that's the future?
Well, let me just add one thing. I don't know if this is a great year for quarterbacks in the draft, but if the Detroit Lions have the 1st or 2nd or 3rd pick, and that's the way it's trending. I'm not dumping on the Lions right now. Let's say it's the 1st pick overall. Who's to say they're going to use it on a quarterback? They could trade it and get, two number ones from somebody, a 3 and a 5 and all that. I mean, just think about that. Just think about the number of draft picks they could possibly have. But if they just stand pat and go into the draft with what they have, and to me, Brad Holmes becomes the most important man in the franchise in at least a decade, because he has assets to deal with, players to deal with, draft picks to deal with, and he can build this. He can put some young players in his team in a hurry. And if you look back at the 2022 draft, and 4 of those picks starting on defense, they targeted the weakest part of the team, and I think it's paid off with what they've got. But in those guys starting right now, right from number 1, Aiden Hutchinson on down, the 6th round with Rodriguez, Malcolm Rodriguez. So I think he's off to a pretty good start with his draft picks. It's never perfect. There's always, when you look at the draft, there's somebody who went, 5 picks later or 2 rounds later that you would rather have. That's one of our favorite national pastimes, is redrafting the NFL draft. But he's set up now to really do some damage in that draft.
And you expect those second-year players, the Aiden Hutchinsons,
absolutely,
Josh Pascals, the Kirby Josephs, and the Malcolm Rodriguez, who you talk about, they're going to take that next step and be the core of that defense moving forward. But it's a defense, Mike, that we've both been to the last 7 games. I mean, it's a defense that needs more talent, and it's got some deficiencies. And so, to your point, you could use some of that capital to really infuse some talent into that defense and maybe turn that part of your team around quicker, because that's obviously the weakest point of this team right now.
No, absolutely. I couldn't disagree. I couldn't agree more with you. And just one thing, I've done a couple of things like you have on Aiden Hutchinson. And look, through 6-7 games now, he's got 4.5 sacks. And so if you really project it down, he's going to have, when you look back on this season, not take it day by day, game by game, he's going to have double-digit sacks. And for a rookie in the National Football League, that's really quite an accomplishment. I looked at this, it was 2-3 months ago, but about a month, I say 2 months ago, looking back at the last 5 or 6 drafts, and the pass rushers drafted in the top 5, only one had double-digit sacks, and that was Bradley Chubb. The rest of them had 9, 8, 7, 3, something like that. So it's a really tough conversion from college football to pro football for rookie pass rushers, because they're used to playing against guys who might be sophomores or third-year sophomores or whatever. Now they're playing against left tackles who are in their 9th year, their 10th year, their 5th year, 2 All-Pros, maybe a couple of Pro Bowl nominations. They're playing against guys who are older and better and seasoned and know exactly how to all the tricks in the book. And so it's tough for Hutchinson. It's tough for everybody just like him.
And it's good to see a guy like Kirby Joseph, who now has 4 fumbles in the last couple games. A guy like Rodriguez, who started all year, he's taken some lumps, but he's made some plays too. He's up for the Rookie of the Year after a sack and a fumble. So it's not just that they're starting for rookies, that these guys are becoming impact players too. And so I think that's huge. And so, turning back to the Hockenson trade, now that leaves yourself with Brock Wright and James Mitchell, who the Lions drafted in the 5th round. Now, James Mitchell is a guy who dealt with a knee injury from last year, missed a lot of camp. You knew he was going to come along a little bit slower. You've seen his snaps start to tick up. He had a catch for 14 yards Sunday against Miami. And look, Brock Wright is a guy, I think every analytics guy or anybody who watches film would probably say he's a better blocker than TJ Hockenson is. And he showed that he can make some plays in the passing game last year when he played in place of TJ, had a couple of touchdowns. He's got 7 catches for 88 yards this year. He's now obviously going to get more opportunities moving forward. But how much do you think this really limits the Lions offense or hurts this Lions offense not having TJ? Do you think we see an immediate impact, or do you think they have enough with Swift maybe getting a little bit healthier? Obviously, when JMO comes back, whenever that is, and some of the other things, do you think on Sunday we're really going to see the impact of not having TJ against Green Bay?
Well, I think to some degree. I mean, I really look. He's a big time playmaker. He really is, and yeah, that's missing. I don't think teams are going to. Well, we won't notice probably, but well, you probably will because you're a lot better at this than I am. But noticing how teams play the Lions defensively without TJ there, do they take out a linebacker and put in a safety, or vice versa, whatever they do, because maybe they don't respect whoever's, and rightfully so, because he's a different player, but they might not respect exactly who the Lions are, going with when they don't in place of TJ Hockenson.
And to that point, I think it'll be interesting, Amon-Ra St. Brown, how teams treat him. So I think to your point of me watching on Sunday, I think that's going to be one that you should watch right away, is how do teams treat Amon-Ra St. Brown, and how will this affect him not having a guy like TJ on the other side that they have to worry about in the middle?
Well, now the readers know why I sit next to you on game day. Giving away my secret.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining me. It was good stuff. Obviously, we're going to talk to Dan Campbell tomorrow in Allen Park. We'll see what he has to say about this. We'll get some players' reaction. So it should be a fairly busy week in Allen Park after this news, and with the Green Bay Packers coming in on Sunday. Thanks for joining me, bud. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Tim. And by the way, there's always something interesting with the Detroit Lions, even on everybody's day off.